Welcome to the Education Talk Show with Jeremy Brooks, Weekly Recess. This is episode 8, and we are super excited for you to join us on the show. We've got an amazing show for you today. We've got some incredible headlines, and we are live from Brooks Broadcasting Studio 24. But again, it's a packed show ahead. First, there's a fiery debate coming out of the United Kingdom. Are schools turning into therapeutic institutions? We'll discuss that. Or are we finally addressing a student mental health crisis head on? Then in New Jersey, there was a middle school that had some facilities issues. They had to shut down because of a burst pipe. It's a reminder of sometimes a bigger national issue regarding school facilities and conditions in our schools. We also have for our feature segment, our feature conversation later on in the show, we're going to be taking a look at the state of education in America and whether teaching still gets the respect it deserves. And then we'll finally wrap up and close out the show, or close out our feature segment discussing civics and media literacy and how we prepare students to be able to separate some of those facts from fiction. And we often know that students are bombarded with lots of nonstop information, sometimes even misinformation. So we'll discuss those things on the show. But before we get started, I'm joined by a fabulous panel tonight. We have Dr. Dwight Rogers.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome back. Welcome back, Dwight Rogers, Kofi, a.k.a. Administrator of the Year. Again, 30-year educator, currently a director for a school district near you. And I've just released a book, Change the Narrative. Don't let the narrative change you. I am very happy and pleased to be here with you this evening. We're going to have a great time. Stay tuned with a wonderful cast of folks here, and I'm sure you're going to love it.
All right, excellent. And we have, of course, Tony G.
Tony G of TonyG.comedy on Instagram, where you can follow me. Jeremy, I said specifically, I don't want to follow Kofi. I said I didn't want to follow him. I don't have my book ready yet, and it's embarrassing. But I'm happy to be here, and let's talk mental health. Let's talk education. Let's have a good time.
All right. Yes. We're definitely going to have a good time. And, of course, they're both our senior education contributors and also many other things as well. Administrator of the Year, stand-up comedian. So we're just so lucky to have you guys.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, please.
Again, I forgot to mention, being an AXA, Region 7 President-elect, be a part of AXA. All educators out there, remember advocacy, networking opportunities, training, and just being that voice. Because sometimes, you know, that extra little help, that extra little time that you put in to be there and be in spaces where other folks aren't, you can be that change maker. So become a part of AXA. You'll never regret it. Hey, it was the best decision I've made in my life. I met this man because of it.
That's true. It's very true. Yeah, it's a wonderful organization. And, Dr. Rob has a little bit of experience too. Dr. Rob Martinez.
Great. Thank you. Great to be with you guys again. Rob Martinez, 38-year educator, retired. I actually ran for state president of AXA a few years ago.
State president.
Didn't get it, but that's okay because I'm resilient, if nothing else. My book is out there, Recipes for Resilient. And just to clear something up, it's not a cookbook. It's not a cookbook. Remember Chicken Soup for the Soul? How it was for the soul? Well, this is for your resilience, okay? So take a look. Find the book. It's great to be with you, Jeremy, Tony, Kofi. Good to be with you.
Pleasure having you.
And then you sandwich me. With the book. You know, this is.
And I'm not a comedian.
And look at this. And now we have upstages. I'm kidding, Dr. Rob.
Well, it is going to be a fun show tonight. And thank you, Dr. Rob Martinez, for being here. And we'll get to hear a little bit about other projects we're working on, especially when we get to our final word segment.
Right.
Get to talk a little bit about that. But it's going to be a fun show tonight. And so let's go ahead and get started. It's all happening right here in Studio 24. The bell's about to ring, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, we're going to start off with our first news headline. And this is really interesting what happened. There's a a individual in the United Kingdom who's in charge of education, one of the leaders in charge of education there. And they mentioned that schools are turning more into therapeutic institutions. And so I wanted to kind of get your guys' take on sort of that comment. It started a little bit of controversy, and it reached the United States as well. This is one of the leading things in the news this week. She told the Sunday Times, if schools are looking for things to be wrong with a child, they'll probably find some, and we'll stay in this sort of negative spiral of unintentionally encouraging children to find things to be unhappy about. And I'm so glad to be joined with this panel because, Tony G's got lots of incredible experience in mental health. Even Dr. Rogers, you've worked in group homes with students and
Absolutely.
You've worked in different settings. And of course, you're the resiliency guy. So this is a great, I think, topic. And I'm not going to mention the person's name, but they also said that that there's a danger that you sort of get into this downward spiral where the more mental health support you give a child, the more you reinforce the idea that they can't cope without it. So those are pretty strong words, of course. And, her bottom line is that kids, they would be better off if schools put more energy into academics and not, discussing mental health as much. So here's the big question for us tonight. Are schools actually leaning too much into sort of therapy mode, or are we actually addressing a mental health crisis that, can't be ignored? And, I forgot this. You were a psychologist. That was so again, no, I knew that. That's why we play in this. There you go. So, Dr. Robin, and you literally wrote the book on resiliency. And so I wanted to talk to you about this and ask you, what do you think? Like, what's your reaction to some of those comments that were made?
Yeah, I think, to the person who's trying to understand what we're accomplishing at school, it might be a fair question because they don't get it. To the educators, the teachers that are out there, the support personnel that are out there, the administrators, everyone working to support kids, I think they get it now that the challenges that students have are so immense that we cannot just simply say, education is going to occur in a vacuum, and so leave all your problems at home and come on into school, and we're going to learn arithmetic and literacy and science, and your emotions don't matter. That's not the way it works. From every one of the positions I've been as a psychologist, a principal, superintendent, it's always been focused on what does this child need right now to learn? And we have to understand that if children are dealing with anxiety, emotional stresses, trauma in their lives, getting to school safe because it's a difficult walkway that they have to go through to get to school, we have to meet them where they are, and we have to figure out what they need. So yes, to some degree, we're more aware of what a child needs now than ever, but it even is going to take more. And I think, you did have a previous episode, you talked a little bit about community schools, where it's recognizing that our children are people, little people with all sorts of wide ranges of needs, and we have to work to meet those needs as we educate, right? Our children need us to educate them, but if they're unsettled, if they're unregulated, if they're so frustrated by whatever they're coming in with, it's so hard to help them move forward with the academics. So I think the person is saying, yes, there's a concern, but they're not recognizing the real need that our kids have.
Well, and, we could also go back to the data, right? You go back to the evidence and, then you just look at the number of referrals to counselors that are on site, to school administration, to to those folks. And, right. It's clear to see that, there really is a bigger need, right? And then I wanted to go over here to Dr. Rogers. You were a former school principal, and kind of looking back on your time at the site level, Did you feel like schools were shifting to being more of like a therapeutic institution? Or, was there a balance with a focus on classroom instruction and all of that as well?
I think Dr. Rob hit on every single point I was going to make, so I have to shift my thinking a little bit. When we look at historically, schools were made and created in like linear fashion. So you come in, the professor or teacher gets in front of the classroom, and it's that rows, and the students would just sit there and just listen and obey. And they realized that that was an effective learning or teaching. And now, like Dr. Rob was talking about, you're dealing with little people. Think of yourself as an adult.
Yeah.
As you are an adult and you come into work, if you're worried about your mortgage, a card note, or whatever not being paid, or if you have domestic issues at home, all of those things, how can you focus on the task at hand? You have to compartmentalize those things. But as children developing themselves, trying to find a sense of self, they too are struggling, just trying to make it. So Dr. Nadine Burke, that used to be the Surgeon General for the state, talked about ACEs and talked about just having those traumatic experiences affecting, like Dr. Rob talked about, if you're hungry, I can't focus on school. If I have all of these extenuating circumstances outside, it's very difficult for me to get those lessons. And there's research that talks about how 1 in 5 children in the U.S. have a diagnosable mental health condition, yet nearly 60% don't receive mental health treatment.
Yeah, wow.
And that's not fragility, it's a crisis of access. So by removing those barriers and treating part of those problems, now a child can live authentically and come into a classroom and really be ready to learn. So I do agree with Dr. Rob and all of his assessments, and just knowing that we can't ignore these problems. These problems are not going away. They're only going to get worse. And so community schools is a solution that a lot of school districts are trying now to deal with, like my superintendent likes to say, whole child, whole family. And you do that, and then you're addressing all of those issues.
And kind of going back to what you're talking about too, with being hungry and all those pieces. And then I love that you talked about compartmentalizing things, because even adults have to do that. And children are developing, and they're developing in their cognitive capacity to be able to do those sorts of things at various levels, of course. But it goes to the affective filter. If students are stressed, if they're not getting that kind of support, are they going to be ready to learn, right? And so it is important for us as educators, I think, to really be able to look at what those barriers are and to try to address those to support students so that they can learn. And then last week, too, you talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Absolutely.
Abraham Maslow.
Right. Absolutely.
And we know at the very bottom level, right, it's those basic needs. And
basic needs.
Or you get to self-actualization, I think.
My question, I have one more thing to talk about. The people or the person who said this.
Yeah.
The credibility of that individual, right? And when we talk about how do students learn and how do we as educators learn, was there a child in the room that had a conversation with him as he made that statement? Because if he did, then he would have a better understanding, like Dr. Rob was speaking about. Dr. Rob was saying that, here it is, this person doesn't know. His lens doesn't have that understanding of what education systems look like. But when you bring in those partners to have these conversations, I'm sure they'll tell them, hey, you know what? Yeah, it's very difficult for me to sit down in this seat and study or concentrate and focus if I can't have my basic needs.
Yes.
That was a great point. Thank you for that, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then Tony G, you were in the classroom trenches just recently.
Yeah.
Did you notice a shift in awareness of mental health with students? Did you notice a bigger need, especially post-COVID?
Yeah. So actually, I, it really, for me, starting out, I had a background working CYA teaching in that population where I worked on the mental health halls, and you get a lot of exposure to different scenarios, and so transitioning into the high school, the public setting, and working as a mental health teacher, in the mental health program, I learned as I went. I didn't understand autism and what is it to be on the spectrum like I do now. I didn't understand bipolar. I didn't understand things to the extent that I do now. I think, at least for me, I've talked about that before, my epiphany on mental health, understanding, I believe we all have strengths and weaknesses in that area, whether, you're on the spectrum, undiagnosed, or whether you have, like myself, OCD, ADD, anxiety, right? Got that from my mom. It's amazing when genetics come into play and we're talking about mental health. Well, I see just a huge undiscovered frontier going on right now, kind of like Star Trek. People are starting to listen. I'm 47, Generation X and above. People don't know their mental health. You ask, you could say, "What's your car you got?" I got this Trans Am. If you're old school, right? Muscle car, I got a Trans Am, and it does this and that. And I got the, BF Goodrich tires. And then I'd say, "Well, I got the Mach E in the back, electric." And then I go, and by the way, I got OCD, I got AD, and then what about you? Zip, right? Either one, they don't know, and that's a lot of people. Or two, they're scared to talk about it.
Right.
Once we take the Band-Aids off of all that stuff, it's going to just flow into high school, public school. Kids could start to feel comfortable. You got a bunch of kids walking around hiding all their stuff. How do I know this? I was one of them. The jock athlete, 3-sport, all league kicker. But no one knew I had all this stuff because I put that mask on.
Right.
See, that's what we're all doing in society. We're all masking.
Right.
Yeah.
Until you get down and dirty, talk about things, be comfortable about it, then you see that real growth.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And we had we had a lieutenant governor on the show too, for I think it was episode 8. She talked about the awareness piece of it,
right,
and also the fact that we are talking about it more, and that it's important to have those discussions. And so it could be that there is just a little bit more awareness, but it is important to have those discussions and to learn and to offer more support. I wanted to go back over here real quick, and we get one more question piece on this. So, Dr. Rob, from your time as a superintendent, how did you balance academics and wellness support without tipping too far in either direction?
Wow, that's a challenge. I think one of the things that both Kofi and Tony have said, though, is that as we have educators out there who increase their own knowledge through appropriate professional development about the ACEs and become aware of the things that our students are carrying with them for trauma, when they become more knowledgeable about mental health, as Tony's talking about, our younger, more new teachers are more ready to accept some of these things and oftentimes are able to connect better with our students.
Yeah.
Not that our veteran teachers can't do that. They can. But if we don't take it as administrators and give the professional development, not to give them the full responsibility of making oh, you're now the therapist, you're now the counselor. That won't work to a teacher. But to have them with information and knowledge about, oh, this is why that child might be presenting to you this way, and what you can do differently about it to build a strategy to help that child.
And imagine all staff understand typically what does it look like when a person on the spectrum is getting upset, potentially,
Exactly.
right? What does it look like when the person, and then you can kind of read them a little better, as opposed to going, I can't tell you how many old school moments I've seen with some, and I won't put the names out, but they're like, hey, pay attention to me right now.
Right.
And I'm like, he's got really bad ADD.
Shame.
And, and
shame approach is never going to get it done.
I like that shame approach.
And the idea of teachers actually helping themselves to then, oh, I can manage this classroom a little better. Well, now we're helping their mental health. So it's like it's a win-win. But
if the kids feel good, they study.
Get more education done that way. More academics now.
Hey,
if kids are more
if we're
subtle,
all happy, we kind of want to work a little harder.
Right. And something both of you touched on, we talk about the different kids, and I hate to be the guy to bring this up, but look, culturally,
Correct.
My book talks about a lot of what Tony G just talked about, the masking piece, right?
Yeah.
I was one of those kids also. I was getting called every name in the book: smut, Tar Baby, Spook, all of these names, and I had no help, right? I had no one coming to my defense or rescue in those spaces, and I got sent out because I spoke up. I said something, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of kids today still go through those areas of, cultural issues, the identity or racial issues on their campuses. If we look at our lowest performing students and we ask ourselves, are they getting their mental health needs addressed? In the African-American Black community, it's something, again, a stigma where, let's not talk.
Stigmas,
Let's not tell those folks what's going on in our lives.
I can't tell you how many times I heard, I'm not getting on the short bus, from kids from urban territories, and they're coming in and they're tough, and they're like, that's not happening.
Yeah.
And they weren't, and that's going back to that stigma, because you would see kids would pick on each other, and it's the last thing you want.
Yeah.
See,
we got to break down those stigmas.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And talking about it like this, having forums that's safe. And then when you get to the school campuses, and then you create those spaces where people can speak about it openly and freely, that's where the learning takes place. You have your ACEs going back. I know one time we talked about, people out in the audience, they're like, well, he's saying ACEs. What does ACEs mean? Adverse childhood experiences. So there's a test that you can go through, and you can ask yourself answer these questions about, do you go through these things? For example, do you go to a neighborhood that's unsafe? Do you have domestic issues in your home? And the list of these questions will give you a scoring sheet that you can identify if you are experiencing or normalized trauma in your life. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know.
That's right.
So it's good to identify those areas.
Yeah. Thank you. Well said. And so sorry to hear, that you experienced those kinds of things too, what you mentioned earlier.
Hey, it's a journey,
people,
If I didn't go through it, then maybe I wouldn't have the empathy like Dr. Rob was just speaking about, so cavalier-like, right?
Yeah.
And he talks about it. The way he speaks so frankly because he's experienced it by seeing it and being the leader he's supposed to be to get involved and intervene.
Yeah.
So I went through it, but me going through it is giving me the ability to now identify with it and say, okay, let me get some folks with me so they can understand it also.
Right.
All right. Well, and I think we all agree that the mental health concerns that we're seeing, there's a little bit of an uptick, and it is important that we address them and support our students and provide those interventions. Okay, so one of the other things that we wanted to discuss is school facilities. School facilities, it's an interesting thing because, you can be in the same district, same town, and two schools, could be so different.
Absolutely.
Depending on the neighborhood and the funding. And, I was at one district and I was in college and we had to take a class they had it at a high school. So, I was just blown away at how old and the facilities at this school. And then I was aware of the separate school in that same town had an Olympic size swimming pool that, rivaled a university swimming pool. And just to see the disparities and the discrepancy in terms of both schools, it was just surprising. But, in New Jersey, Winslow Township Middle School, they had to actually close for 3 days straight because of a burst pipe. It caused major damages, and more than 800 students, were doing hybrid schedule during that time, while officials waited on an environmental clearance to be able to get kids back to campus. And so, that I think that one story is just sort of reminiscent of what we oftentimes are seeing in schools throughout the nation. And so it's one story, but it points to, I think, a bigger issue, which I want to discuss with everybody tonight. The condition of our school buildings. And I wanted to get some data to kind of, look at how big of a problem this really is. And so I'll just kind of read off here and point out some of the stats. So 54% of school districts report needing updates or replacement of multiple systems like HVAC, plumbing, electrical. 41% of districts say HVAC systems need replacing in at least half of their schools. And then the average public school building is about 49 years old. Nearly 4 in 10 were built before 1970. 31% of schools use at least one non-permanent portable building. And I know we're seeing more and more students in portables these days, it seems. Roughly 1 in 5 schools were undergoing major repair, renovations, and modernization. And high poverty districts are more likely to depend on state funding for facilities, leaving them vulnerable to funding shortfalls. So, Dr. Rob, I wanted to start off with you on this one too. When you see a school shut down because of a burst pipe, things like that, and the disruption that it can cause to learning, how does that connect with, your work on resiliency, but also can a district truly bounce back from these types of situations with buildings that are having issues like that?
Oh my gosh, Jeremy, this is one of the nightmares for a superintendent, trying to figure out how do you make sure that every one of your facilities is safe, secure, has water, has electricity, has the things it needs to keep kids okay through the time they get there in the morning to the time they're leaving in the evening. And being in large districts, you're going to find many of our schools are past their due date. I'll say it that way, right? I mean, when we think about, that was built in 1980. Well, that was 45 years ago. And, your roof of the house has been replaced maybe twice by then. But schools just stand the test of time. And unfortunately, water pipes break and things happen. And with the way the budgeting is occurring, the only funds that we get are in one little bucket, and you've got to use that bucket to pay every single person who's on the payroll and to keep the lights on, pay the water bills, just like running a house. And now you have to take care of the entire infrastructure for what maybe cost $20 million in 1985, but now to keep going will cost you $5 million to replace a percentage of that school. So when you have those incidents, learning stops. And I'll tell you, it can freak you out as a superintendent, as a district personnel, a site administrator, because you're trying to make sure your kids are safe. You want to make sure they're safe. So you've got to work with your community. You've got to work to give them information. Some of the districts I've been in, we were fortunate enough to pass bonds because this is the way the schools can get improved. When you have a new school, sometimes the new housing will pay for it, but there's no other continuing funds, so you need bonds, which means you need support of your community. So just giving you a couple of numbers, one of the last districts I was in, the facilities master plan was over $1.5 billion to improve the schools. $1.5 billion. Now, they were able to pass a $250 million bond. That doesn't fix $1.5 billion. And every one of those $1.5 billion over the next month is going to increase because the costs go up and the situation gets worse. So it's a challenge. There's not enough funds directly locally to help the schools. So again, in your district offices, you've got to have an on-point business person who's knowledgeable about bonds and knowledgeable about finances, and the superintendent and the entire team have to work with the community to help people see that our schools need those levels of investments. It's not that we twittered away the money.
Right.
It's that it costs a lot of money to keep things
I think you just hit on a key point too, because here's the thing. You talked about the bonds, and that's really critical. Not every single LEA or local education agency is unfortunately successful at working with the community and, and getting those bonds approved. I mean, so there's some school districts that just go without, and those facilities don't get repaired. But you mentioned, I think, a really important key point that you do have to try and you have to try to convince the community, work with them, and share those concerns, and so that it's very tangible and they know that, like, what is going on. Correct?
Right. You have to be a good fiduciary of the dollars. Take care of all the money, and that's why, again, your business folks, your superintendent, your cabinet need to work with your principals and the entire teaching staff and employees as well. When we're all see we need the support and we work together, you're going to be more successful.
Absolutely.
But I'll tell you again, the original point, learning stops. And unless you've been the person that's like running to Costco to throw water bottles in the back of your truck to make sure the kids can drink some water, that anxiety you don't get until you do that. So figure out how far the Costco is from you, how fast you can get water.
Any advice, though, real quick, before we move on, for those superintendents that maybe are struggling with, like...
Well, it's being transparent as well. A lot of people don't want to talk about the facility needs.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to communicate clearly, hey, this school is this years old. We are going to have some roof
Maybe
issues.
invite the media in.
Because that's part of the transparency of budget as well.
Yep.
I mean, if you don't have a deferred maintenance within your budget, you have to start one, because that's where you're able to maybe put $1 million away right now that, unfortunately, some will say we should spend it on the kids. But if you don't put that $1 million away now and $1 million away the next year and so on, you won't be able to fix that roof when you need it.
Yeah.
Because there's no other emergency fund that's just going to come bail you out. So you have to plan ahead that way.
True that.
And then Dr. Rogers, I mentioned that those two schools, right? It's like two different worlds. And, to me, that gets to, a big piece there in equity, right? To see those conditions with the two schools is just unfair. But in your experience, were kids in low-income communities more likely to learn in older, poorly maintained buildings, or are they less likely? I mean, when you go to school, it's a reflection of, is there as much motivation when you're in a hot classroom and it's, you can't get water out of the fountain, things like that?
Well, let me give you a story real quick. So from the book, I write about when I worked in Southern California and worked in some really low poverty areas. And so drove up to Northern California because I wanted to show my students the state capitol. We wanted to go and lobby, wanted to see how Congress worked. We wanted to do all of those things. On the drive up to Northern California, my students looked out the window and they was like, hey, that's a nice school over there. They were off the 5 freeway. And I think you know where I'm going with this. And it's off the 5 freeway, and there was a nice fenced area, basketball courts, nicely new constructed building. It was beautiful, right? I said, that's not a school. It's a prison. And they were in shock. They were like, that can't be a prison. That prison looks nice. So when the world for students, for kids, looks better on the inside of a prison than it does in the inside of a classroom, what's the motivation for coming to school? And what's the mentality that happens when they do go to jail? Because, hey, they're in jail, and this jail is better than where I live, and this jail is better than my school. So what are we saying as a country? What are we investing? Our kids are saying, am I not worth going to a good school? Malcolm X talks about, if you go to a poor school and you have poor buildings and poor books, you get a low education. Because where do good teachers go?
Oh, yeah.
They don't go to those schools unless they have to. So we have to really rethink about moving the needle by investing and changing the mindset of putting dollars where it counts, like what Dr. Rob was talking about, and prioritizing it. Yes, getting the community behind to build up those spaces where there's not. But then the problem is when you're in a low-income area, how do you get the community behind you to build up those areas? So it's a very delicate balance, like Dr. Rob was talking about. So for a child going into a poor school, it's like, am I not worthy of being at a good school? During the summer, when I graduated from high school, I had to go to night school and summer school. And it was at a school across the way in Brooklyn. And that school was so old and run down, and it was just a horrible nightmare of a school. And so I had to go to the restroom. And while I'm in the restroom, it was marijuana smoke all in the bathroom and people in there. And I really had to go to the bathroom. But I chose not to go in that bathroom because I knew that there was danger in there. So I went to the girls' bathroom because I had to go. But kids face these things all the time. And they develop, survival instincts just to go to school, which is not okay.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. All All right, Tony, you've been in the classroom. Ever teach in a room where the ACs failed? I mean, or the ceilings leaked? If so, how does it affect students?
Well, it's funny you say that. When I got hired, this is going back to, gosh, it must have been early 2000 before the housing market crashed, right? And money was coming in everywhere, right? California. And so we realized the district, they needed to get, more buildings. So they came up with the idea, temporarily put out the portables, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was a long time ago, right? And so we get to, and this might have been in the late 90s for all I know. I'm just throwing a year out at this point. But this was the year that they finally, they're tearing them all down, right? And they're building, right? So there was such a gap in time. And when you're talking about money and budgets and all that stuff, long story short, I was in a portable that was a storage unit. Mm-hmm. When I got there, they were moving out the old cleaning supplies and everything on the fly because we had to make room because population increase. Mm-hmm. And the kids were just, it was hard. And I'd have people, and it didn't help because I'd have adults coming in, staff, and, oh, this is gross. This is, and I'm like, yeah, I know.
I have to be here every day.
And I did everything I could. I put some fun Rocky posters, some comedian things, inspirational stuff. You do what you can, what you have, right? I call it the barnacle, like the old boat in Jaws. I don't know if you guys watch that movie. And the skipper's got this old boat, and the shark's taking it in. So I'm always like, we just got to keep this thing to float, But again, it's about a money thing, right? And so that's where I could talk about the problem, but here's where we got to get creative. What are we going to do now? I think we got to get clever with our ability to reach the world. We have social media, we have podcasting. We need people out putting this out there. Celebrities have money, people have money. They donate all the time, right?
Like Tony G, you hit on something that Dr. Rob talked about. When those kids go through those systems, they build that resiliency if they have a home to come to that can coat them and hold them and build them back up when they go home. So what about those babies who don't have that at home?
Yeah.
Where did that resiliency come from? I would love to hear, how you feel and what you think about that, because that's a resiliency issue for a lot of our babies. They deal with these things every day. So what happens to them? The resiliency piece. Can you speak to me about that?
Well, what I would
I won't
say.
put you on the spot.
No, that's all right. I can do it. I think we also get confused between resiliency and grit, right? So a lot of people talk about that, but what we forget is that so many of our children have had experiences going through a challenge, right? So every challenge that they go through, if they're able to learn the strategies, if our educators are able to talk them through those strategies, that becomes a skill that they can hold on to. Yes. So it really is a developmental process of helping our children build those skills, one skill at a time, holding on to them. I think of the babies, and I've got a 10-month-old, or now almost a year-old granddaughter who fell probably 40,000 times before she's now walking. But now that she's walking, she's running.
Yeah.
And it's like a simple lesson that helps people realize you keep falling. And you keep falling, but you got to keep going.
Yeah.
And the systems need to be resilient to be able to help our children develop those skills.
Thank you for that.
That's the nickel answer there.
No, I appreciate the systems need to be resilient. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that.
All right, and we're getting comments from viewers. Please keep on sending in those comments. We have some comments discussing and sharing that you're thankful for the discussion here, and you're out there and you're learning a lot from the conversations we're having. So we appreciate that feedback, and keep the questions coming in, and we will try to address those over the air. But the Camden case, it is a local issue, but I think it does point to the fact that, again, half of the schools, it seems like, or half the districts are sharing that they have those concerns. And it really does go back to that whole funding and finance piece. And, that really is the investment. We need to start investing more in education. That's always a concern. We do got to move on to our feature segment. And the theme here is the state of education and respect for teaching. This is something that, sometimes comes up. And for tonight's feature conversation, we're stepping back to look at the bigger picture, the state of our education system, and the respect, or maybe the lack of respect, that our society can maybe sometimes show. It's interesting because if you look at media and sometimes how our educators are portrayed in the media, they could be portrayed as the amazing educator, that can turn a whole school around or a classroom around that's struggling and has some difficulty. Or there's the other piece of it. Like if we look, for example, at there was a movie.
Ferris Bueller.
Yep. Yeah.
Bueller.
Yeah.
Bueller.
Right. There's that. And by the way, Ben Stein, you guys remember him? Yeah. He's portrayed a certain way as an educator. But we go to there's that movie on Las Vegas, the Vegas, not Vacation, but there's one of them where, the teacher, he slips out money from the envelope and takes it with him to Las Vegas. I think it's a wedding movie.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, point is, we look at sometimes how educators are portrayed. And then there's also the saying. There's a saying, those who can do and those who can't teach. Right? So, and not all of educators are, of course, portrayed that way. But I think that kind of speaks to the heart of kind of, concern regarding how educators are perceived in our nation. And so, and there's actually data too that shows that polling numbers, are kind of going down a little bit when it comes to trust. And I wanted to start off right over here, and we'll go to you, Dr. Rob. You've led districts. From your perspective, how has respect for teachers shifted over the years, and what does that do for morale?
Yeah, it can be a huge challenge for an individual teacher or a group of teachers or even a district set of teachers, quite frankly. And over the years, I think there has been a lessening of respect for the entire profession. The challenges are, how do we go about changing that, right? From the teachers themselves to recognize that it is a worthy profession. Paying more is always something that is appropriate. In the districts now I've been in, getting full paid benefits to their families of teachers so that they can take away some of the anxiety about, what do I do if I get sick? What do I do if I need to take care of my own child? Those are some things. The pizza parties, great. The applause, they like that. But quite frankly, it's giving teachers the autonomy to be the professionals that they can be in groups of settings, appropriate professional development, and time to work together so that they can establish something good. I'll share that I had 3 individuals that I know, 3 colleagues, Julie Lucky, Janice Nowak, Lisa Christensen, who just retired from working at the same elementary school since 1989. 1989. Wow. So do the math. This was their 36th year of working together. They didn't see it as a challenge of respect or disrespect. They built a community together. They built a community around that school. They really had a dramatic effect on children and families in that area, where they were teaching families over the years. Mm-hmm. They both all 3 of them now gracefully retired and had amazing careers. It can be done.
Absolutely.
It can be done.
Absolutely.
Then, Dr. Rogers, I wanted to ask you, looking at just sort of how communities sort of look at, people working in law or working in engineering. What do you think it might look like if educators, if teachers were also put on that sort of level too?
Well, with today's kids, today's young people, they are so far advanced than we were growing up that they see life a lot differently. I want to take another route real quick. When we talk about schools and the respect of educators, when our young people, our young black students in particular, go to like HBCUs, right? They will see a professor, a teacher who will be in a suit and tie. When they speak to them, they will see them dressed up accordingly. You know, that is showing them that dignity and that respect of a teacher, of what a instructor would do. There is a mindset and a shift of, I'm not going to dress like my student. I'm going to dress like someone who is professional and prepared to teach you and engage you. It used to be that way where teachers, you know, followed certain codes and guidelines and things like that. But I think over time, and I know I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, over time, I think there's been a lax and a shift of just the presentation of how you show up to work. And as a result of that, you know, there's been a shift of closeness, of that respect, along with a lot of other factors that go along with it. But I feel like we as adults need to be more role models and do the things that kids need us to do and desire us to do out of responsibility. For example, me being an educator, I still have a following of young people who I still embrace as adults now, because over the years, they have their own families now, and they still stay in contact with me because of that respect level. And there are so many teachers who I've worked with have the same relationship. So I've seen it, like Dr. Rob, I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand where a teacher comes in and they're more than a teacher. If you look at a lot of teachers, they're more than just a teacher. They are a mother, a father, you know, an extended family member. They're all of these things that extend far beyond the bell. And as a result of that, then that respect level or whatever, you know, is just intrinsic. You don't have to force it. You know, it's something that just becomes part of that journey for that student. But then there are some people, because teachers are just like anybody else. You know, some people choose that profession because they get the summer off. you know, and you know, and we have to do a better job of being able to identify that. But then with the shortage of teachers, sometimes it makes it very difficult. So I'll say that piece.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And speaking of more than just teaching, our buddy Robert Henschliff back there has got a book on that, a whole series on that too, which is awesome.
Great.
Also, you know, talking about kind of building off what he discussed regarding modeling, right? Modeling that dress, the way we dress as educators. Do you think that's, you know, that could help? And do you think students sometimes maybe pick up on those societal perceptions of our educators too? Can that spill over into the classroom and how, you know, teachers are respected?
Yeah, I think, you know, the overall, you know, I think a lot of kids do respect their teachers, but more so, I mean, I definitely know, because I had a whole thing one year, it was 2 years ago, where I had to have the best drip.
I remember you saying that, yeah.
I went out and got all the nice stuff. I was buying bonobo shirts. You know, I was so dumb. I would call them bonobo, right? Not even saying it right until my wife corrected me. And so it mattered because I could see, you know, I'd have kids I didn't even realize, hey, I like that shirt. And so it shows that, you know, a presentation matters, but more so, honestly, kids will respect a teacher when they connect. But now we're talking about, you know, how are the teachers feeling, you know? And I know a lot of them are, you know, in the sense they are jaded. They are sour on different things. Let's face it, life's hard, right? So as you get older, it doesn't always go up. Sometimes it kind of tips down a little bit. And so I think that's where it's just crucial as administrators. You got to be paying attention to the morale. And a lot of times we get caught up in so much, we forget about the morale. Yeah, sure, things got to get done, scores got to be, but read the room.
For the certificated
when you're doing those
staff.
big meetings with your teachers, you got hundreds of, read the room. What is it they look, what am I feeling? And you got to fix that. And sometimes you got to, you know, maybe, okay, you know what? I want to do this, but I see my soldiers need this.
Right. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, good points right there. All right. So, and by the way, we just got a comment on how this show's really needed. These discussions are needed. And so we appreciate those comments. Thank you again. We got about 10 minutes left, a little more than that.
Good, because I got to pee.
Yeah. I want to squeeze this one. I think we could talk about this just briefly. Civics, media literacy, and misinformation, because this is a big concern. So our final feature tonight, we're turning to the topic that connects everything we've been talking about, civics and media literacy. We live in an age where students and adults, we're flooded with information. Sometimes misinformation can be out there. And so social media, there's the 24-hour news, there's the AI generated content, and it can be harder than ever to tell fact from fiction, especially these days. And when misinformation spreads, it doesn't just confuse people. It can also erode trust in schools, communities, and also even democracy itself can, there can be concerns too. So the question is, how are we preparing students to separate the fact from fiction, and what role should schools play in teaching media literacy as a core civic skill? So we'll try to get in one question apiece. We'll try to keep it quick. We're going to go right over here to Dr. Rogers, and then we'll go this way. Dr. Rogers, do you think misinformation hits communities harder than others, some communities harder than others? And how do issues of access and equity play into this?
Well, different communities receive information and interpret information differently. You have your students in your communities who are more aware, and they do research behind what they see and hear. They question things versus just taking things at face value. One thing about with AI, you see a lot of AI pictures. You're like, wait a minute, that doesn't look real. And so there's a lot of that questioning that goes on. However, a lot of communities and a lot of different adults are still getting used to this. And when you have so much of the media coming from, social media accounts and from TV, and it's pumping things at you, and with the world going so fast, who has time to really fact check things, right? So they take it as face value.
Yeah.
So that's where the trust comes in of, do I trust this information? Where you have some folks who really take the time to ask questions like, how serious and how real is this, versus taking it that way. So I think it just varies from community to community. I think it's unfair to just say that everyone sees it the same way.
And then, Dr. Rob, when you look at the flood of misinformation today, do you think that schools are doing enough to prepare students for this challenge?
Yeah, I think some are trying, but not enough. We really need to do more. And I think Kofi really hit it there with the phrase I think about is ever the beautiful question. And, even for whatever student, for whatever, information they're gathering, that's where the learning happens, when they start to develop the question. And teachers are now being taught how to develop a question or help their students develop the question that AI cannot answer. Because ever the beautiful question comes from a human sense of, we can think of things, and somebody will argue with me that AI cannot.
Right.
We really can. So we have to keep questioning and giving that pause to students, as you mentioned. Take a pause, think it through. What am I really going to do with this information? Am I just going to share it fast because I saw it, or am I going to consider it, think it through, validate it?
Yes.
Yes.
Love that answer. Thank you, sir.
So we got a comment, and I'll just ask this real quick, and then we'll get to you real fast. So one of the comments was, sometimes, you can become a little jaded as an educator with everything going on. And how can we sometimes address that?
My simple answer would be one student at a time.
Absolutely.
One student at a time. Because the things that we oftentimes don't think that they're learning, they're hearing, they're seeing, they're capturing information, and you may not see the learning progress, but it can and it will happen for them, one student at a time.
All right. Thank you, guys. So now, last question right here on the main segment. The show goes so quick. It is tough to keep track of it all. Okay. So, Tony, you taught in the classroom. Did you see students struggling to separate sort of the fact from fiction that they're exposed to, the credible sources from unreliable ones?
Yeah. When you're talking about So are we talking about Chat GPT, social media? Or are we talking
Just
about
all the, did you ever have students that came to you and said, Mr. G, like, is this real? Is this happening? I remember one time back when I was in the classroom, I had a question about the Mayan calendar. Do you guys remember that?
Okay.
The 2012.
The world's gonna end.
Yeah, remember that?
So,
do you ever get those?
So that's an ongoing,
Yeah.
2000, 1999 to 2000.
Remember that?
It's going to shut down.
Yeah.
yeah, that would happen a lot in the classroom where you have different scenarios like what you're saying. But I would always look at it as an opportunity now. How can I connect what's being said into what's going on in the classroom, right? But I'm learning now, like, wow, social media is really the future. Like what you're seeing, media is the future, where markets are forming. It's how people are getting their voice out now on platforms, connections. I don't know. I think we got to figure out a way how to capitalize that, on the education level with kids in the classroom. It is a big shift. Mm-hmm. It's a big shift. And what do you do with the older teachers that are jaded? Or I shouldn't even just say older. What about younger? You could be younger and jaded as well. I would just say, reevaluate what's your why. Mm-hmm. And if you feel like your why is not really answered there, then maybe you got to reflect on other possibilities. There's plenty of schools. There's plenty of need in California alone. Yeah. I'm sure everywhere.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. We have a little bit of time left for our final word. Okay. So we got like 45 seconds apiece here for the final word. The timing is tight always, but this is a lot of fun. Anybody want to go first?
I'll jump first.
Okay.
Here's my message. First of all, young people, you are not the stereotype. You are strong, beautiful, and talented, and resourceful. No matter what the circumstance, no matter what the situation is, define your worth. Equity isn't about just fixing HVC systems or teaching media literacy. It's about giving students the tools they need to see through the lies, affirm their identity, and to build them up. Because no system can take away your narrative. Our kids have to believe in their strength, and we have to be the leaders in charge to do that. So my ask and my plea for all educators out there, for all adults out there, see yourself and then help those young people see themselves, because we are in this together. Humanity has to win. Humanity will win. From me to you, have a good one.
All right. That was beautiful. Thank you. 30 seconds. Sorry.
We got 30 seconds. This is my moment to say, well, guys, I got a show October 12th. Okay. Please, if you haven't already followed me on Instagram, TonyG.comedy. I'm going to have the details out. It's called Dress to Kill. And I'm going to be dressing and hopefully killing on stage, of course. Look at that hacky joke. You won't get hacky jokes that night, though. That's all, guys. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. And hey, make sure you get us a flyer. We'll put it up.
I will.
Yeah. All right. Dr. Rob.
Yes. Final word. Resilience is the thread that goes through our systems. Mm-hmm. And we have to work on our systems to make sure our children have the best foundation they can to learn. The two things that you can do: get to your schools, go visit them, go congratulate them, go see the amazing things that are happening, and focus on investments for your community, for the students in your community. You can never go wrong by doing good things for your community. Remember, challenges are in every one of our stories, and resilience can be the way we finish those stories.
Beautiful.
Remember,
Yes,
I like to change my response to what he said.
Yeah.
You got me beat on that one. Okay.
Well, before we close, guys, I just want to thank you so much for being on the show. This is always, of course, a lot of fun, and our audience loves you. They're commenting, and I love us all. I'm sure.
Yeah. I love him.
Hey, audience,
They love you too.
Paul, does he not look like? just a handsome, striking brother of Eric Estrada.
Hey,
I'll take that.
I'm telling you right now.
I can see it. I can see it.
Good looking guy.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, thank you guys again so much. Thank you to our viewers, our audience out there. We appreciate you and everything you do.
Yep.
And to our
Thank you.
our crew in the back. Thank you guys
crew.
so much.
go crew. Yes.
Good work, guys.
Great job, Jeremy.
Thank you. And this has been the Education Talk Show, Jeremy Brooks, Weekly Recess. Thank you so much. We'll see you, folks.
Peace.
Bye-bye.